Our story kicks off in a cluttered little workshop where a young boy is scribbling and erasing magic formulas on stone tablets. He can't help but think that even without smartphones or TV, a world with magic in it is way more exciting than anything back home. Surrounded by stacks of scrolls and research notes, he grins and says this cluttered mess is basically his dream come true. This whole obsession with magic actually started back in his previous life when his dad used to claim they came from a long line of real magicians, all while performing pretty standard stage tricks. As a kid, he bought it completely. He got hooked on magic after watching a performer survive getting stabbed with knives during a show. With no real father figure to speak of, he buried himself in books about the history of sorcery and black magic instead. By 17, he'd finally accepted that magic wasn't real, even though some part of him still wished it was. Then one day, a girl named Yochan showed up begging for his help to save their black magic club from getting shut down. The club had a reputation for weird stuff, necromancy, eating so-called magical meals, and it eventually landed them in hot water with the student council. Once the council pulled the plug for good, the girl made it clear she was done being associated with such a strange crowd. While he walked her home, she bluntly asked if he had a crush on her, or if every upperclassman just acted like this. He froze up, totally flustered while she stared at him. Clearly annoyed, she stormed off in a huff, but he spotted a truck barreling toward the intersection. He shouted a warning as she stepped right into its path, and he knew he had to move. Without a second thought, he ran into the That's when it hit him, he wasn't in his own country anymore. He wasn't even with his own people. Still trying to figure out where he was. He looked down and got the shock of his life. He was staring at the tiny, pudgy hand of an infant. He'd been reborn as a baby. He cried out as his new parents cradled him in a room built from old stone. 2 years went by in the territory of the Marin clan, a place about as far from modern civilization as you could get. His new parents were blown away by how sharp he was, amazed that he could already feed himself at just 2 years old. His dad laughed it off, saying, of course, their son would be a genius. While his father mentioned that his baby sister would probably turn out just as smart, the boy quietly thought about his new name, Abel Black, all while secretly missing the taste of ramen. Back home, he learned that his red eyes and white hair were the signature traits of the Marin clan. His family performed daily prayers to their ancestors, while life outside carried on among others who shared the same unusual look. After studying a map of a continent he'd never even heard of, and confirming there wasn't a single electrical appliance in sight, he came to one conclusion. He was living in a completely different world. Now 4 years old, life as part of the clan was in full swing, and he'd taken up a new hobby, carving wooden totems. Those totems were treated as essential magic items, guardian figures used in the clan's ceremonies. Abel started wondering if they were basically magic dolls, right before a sharp pain made him cry out. His mother spotted the cut and called for his father, who checked it right away, then cast a quick spell to heal the scratch. Staring down at his fully healed finger, Abel realized with total shock that his dad had just used real healing magic. The Marin clan actually had genuine supernatural power. From there, he started noticing magic everywhere in daily life. Men lighting campfires just by thinking about it. An old woman calling water for her garden. Totems coming to life like dolls. As he was carried through the village, Abel felt this deep sense of validation. His lifelong obsession with the occult hadn't been a waste after all, not in a world where magic was actually real. He soaked in his new reality, genuinely grateful for dying and getting reborn somewhere he could finally chase his dream of becoming a real magician. His focus gets interrupted by his little sister Gizzle, who wants to play right as his father shows up telling Abel to quit obsessing so hard over his totems. His dad suggests he get up and look after his sister instead of working, which is Abel silently calling him a meathead while he flips through a book confirming just how common magic is in this world. He learns that spirits live inside all natural objects, and that magic happens when you give those spirits specific instructions called spells along with your own magic power. A basic spell called Light Characters lets you draw glowing lines and shapes in the air just by focusing on spirits and using your imagination to form magic circles. Carving totems turns out to be the best way to sharpen your sense of spatial awareness for building complex circles. And it's done with special clan knives that slice through enchanted wood without needing any real strength. Historically, the Marin clan was feared as a secret weapon in wartime thanks to their deep magical knowledge and the powerful spirits living in the trees on their mountain. That legendary reputation feels like ancient history now, especially as his little sister pokes his puffed-up cheeks while he's lost in thought. Since the war ended over a century ago, magic use has faded during the long stretch of peace, and his father proudly hands him a handmade bow to kick off his training as a hunter. Abel lets out a long sigh, frustrated that even in a magical world, he's still stuck learning old-school hunting. All while Gizzle begs him to make his carvings look cuter. Time keeps moving until Abel turns 7, and the village stays a quiet, sleepy place, nothing like the clan's old military glory days. His father finally loses his patience after finding the second floor of their house buried in totems. And he yells for Abel, who's earned himself quite the reputation as a totem maniac. Slipping away to a quiet part of the forest, Abel gets ready to push his solo training further, invoking the light character's spell one more time. Now 7, he successfully summons a massive glowing halo in the sky, which leaves his 5-year-old sister, Gizzle, amazed as she cheers for her big brother's talent. They think back on how far they've come, training together in secret until they could finally pull off large-scale light characters without any outside help. Abel tells Giselle they need to keep their real magical abilities a secret from the rest of the village, even as he remembers how his dad once found his early drawings amusingly small. Abel figures that if there's still a war-era magic user living in the village, that person would basically be a legend. And that thought sends him straight to the chieftain's house looking for a teacher. He shows up with his sister and meets the chieftain, who's using magic to keep himself looking young despite claiming to be 150 years old. The chieftain asks if the boy really wants to learn magic from him, warning that his teaching style is brutally strict, even for a kid. After a tense pause, the old man tells Abel to come back tomorrow once he's ready, since he first wants to see just how serious the boy's resolve really is. As they head out, they run into a girl named Phiro, who mentions that her grandfather seemed pretty pleased with how things went. Phiro explains that since magic's gotten so rare, the old man is probably thrilled to finally find a use for all his ancient knowledge. Abel thanks her for sticking up for him earlier. She instantly gets defensive and flustered, insisting she didn't help him on purpose and demands he actually work hard so he doesn't disappoint her grandfather. After Abel notes just how prickly she is, his official training under the chieftain kicks off, and he dives into the complexities of magical theory. His ability to build magic circles improves fast under real guidance, finally letting him pull off the high-level magic he'd always dreamed of. The training is brutal. He pushes himself without sleep, struggling to hide his progress from his father, refusing to let something as small as a cold stop his second shot at life. Driven by the thrill of leveling up, he spends his days carving and studying nonstop, while his sister keeps bringing him meals to fuel the obsession. He spends countless nights hunched over his desk, his room filling up with stacks of research papers and rows of totems as he perfects his craft. 6 months into his apprenticeship, the chieftain takes the group outside and asks Abel to show everyone the full results of his training. Abel takes a deep breath and starts his incantation, invoking the light character spell to bring his power to life. He manages to activate 2 magic circles at once, a feat that instantly grabs the chieftain's attention as he realizes the boy can handle multiple totems at the same time. This exercise is specialized training for manipulating objects with magic, and it requires carefully placing magic circles on the totems ahead of time. Abel commands the wooden figures to move like dolls and dance. Though privately, he admits his control still isn't quite at a true sage's level. The chieftain is genuinely stunned when he sees the boy has just made the totems float. He's added a complex spinning motion to their flight, too. Eager to prove he's just getting warmed up, Abel summons a wind sphere that creates a powerful vacuum, leaving the chieftain speechless as the magic keeps intensifying. With a confident smile, Abel gathers the energy together, forming a massive, swirling vortex that towers over the practice field. Abel keeps his focus locked in as the swirling vortex builds toward its peak. The massive sphere of wind completely dwarfs the practice field. As the boy holds steady control over the concentrated power, the energy suddenly condenses, then releases in a blinding flash. The final stage of the technique kicking in. A violent explosion tears across the field, wiping out the target and leaving a trail of destruction behind. As the dust settles, Abel sheepishly apologizes for overdoing it, while the chieftain stands frozen, stunned that the totem managed to neutralize its own massive attack. The old man demands to know where the boy learned such an advanced improvisation, but Abel just admits he experimented with the magic circles until they worked. When asked if he built the complex circle entirely on his own, he explains he finished it through trial and error while his master was busy with village prep. Completely overwhelmed by the boy's talent, the chieftain bursts into tears of joy, declaring his training complete. There's nothing left he can teach his student. Pharaoh rushes over to celebrate while the old man marvels at how impossible it is for someone so young to master wind pressure and totem manipulation at this level. Despite the success, all that exertion leaves the boy coughing and exhausted, which has Pharaoh worrying about his physical condition. The chieftain suggests it's time the boy moved on to studying the library's archives since the ancient texts now hold more for him than any personal lesson could. Hungry for more knowledge, the boy asks to borrow a huge stack of books and several extra totems from the master's house. The old man watches in shock as the boy uses magic to levitate dozens of heavy books and totems, planning to haul it all home in just a few trips. As they head out, the boy reflects on his endless curiosity and his drive to master every corner of this new world. While another girl watches their strange exit in total confusion, his sister trails close behind, cheerful as ever as they carry the massive pile of research materials back home. The boy is filled with pure joy, realizing he's finally found the perfect environment to grow. Years pass, and a now 13-year-old Abel announces to his 11-year-old sister Gizel that his latest magical project is finally complete. Excited to test out his new creation, he suggests they head into the village right away to start collecting data. Hiding behind a nearby hedge, the two spot a local man, and Abel activates his magic wand, letting the spell take shape. A floating screen pops up displaying the personal stats of a farmer named Hans. The man's totally puzzled while the kids giggle and slip away. Abel notes that an average adult has around 20 points of magical power, while his sister asks what exactly his new spell even does. He explains it's basically a status display like something out of a video game, which leaves her completely confused by the terminology. He briefly thinks back to his reincarnation into this world and how thrilled he was to find himself somewhere real magic actually existed. Feeling like a total protagonist, he grants Gizel's request to see her own stats, revealing she's got 37 magic and 8 strength. He notes her powers already above average and can't help lamenting how little interest the Marin clan has in magic compared to his own father, who only picked it up much later in life. When she asks about his numbers, the display reveals a jaw-dropping 865 magic, but a measly 2 strength. He chalks his massive magic capacity up to years of nonstop practice, but his mental comparison to the chieftain gets cut off by a sudden realization. He's horrified to see his sister is 4 times stronger than him physically, despite barely being active, and he can already sense where this trend is going. His attention shifts to 2 local boys hiding nearby, and he realizes the flowers they brought weren't for him. They were for his sister. After his intense stare scares the 2 suitors off, they flee in a panic, leaving him wondering why they were so terrified of a simple look. He reflects on his lonely past life as a magic enthusiast, realizing that even in this world, his social standing hasn't really improved much. Right as he's wallowing in his own social misery, a loud voice cuts in when he instantly recognizes as Fros. She shows up with her animal companion, aggressively grilling him about rumors of his suspicious magical activity outside the village. Surprisingly touched to be talking with someone outside his own family, He offers to show her status, too, which sends her into a panic, demanding he stop. Ignoring her protests, he scans her anyway and finds 19 magic and 20 strength and notes she's descended from a legendary sage. Discovering her physical strength is 10 times his own sends him into shock, realizing he'd lose any physical fight against the local girls. Terrified by her combat potential, he suddenly switches to overly formal speech before quickly making excuses to head home as the sun sets. When they get back, their father is furious, yelling about the dangers of staying out so late while Gizzle tries to defend her brother. The father complains that the boy's always playing with magic instead of doing chores. But Gizzle points out that his totems actually help with the farm work. After being told he'll never be a proper head of the household since he's never hunted, the boy takes it personally and declares he'll go out and do it himself. Abel officially kicks off his first hunting trip as part of the village group. He's introduced to members of the Artie family, including an adult named Galia and a boy named Shurbai, who's determined to pull his own weight. Even though Abel's seen them around before, this is the first time they've actually spoken, and he thanks them for the chance to join. Abel recalls that morning when his sister Jel was in tears over him leaving, admitting to himself that his reasons for hunting went beyond just physical training. Gisel had begged him to stay safe and not push himself too hard, while Abel wondered if his father was actually jealous of the attention he'd been getting. He worries that Gisel's lack of friends comes from how attached she is to him and reflects on the Marin clan's customs around early adulthood and marriage. He hopes his absence will push his sister to socialize more, even as he laments his own social isolation caused by his single-minded focus on magic. Back in the present, Abel tries to befriend Shurbai with a handshake, but the kid rudely turns his back and ignores him. Even after his father demands he shake hands, Shurbai stays dismissive, forcing Abel to remind himself to keep calm since he's technically an adult now. The father strictly forbids Abel from using magic during the hunt, ordering him to rely only on archery and his own body. Just an hour into the trip, Abel's already completely wiped out and begging to go home, much to his father's annoyance at his lack of stamina, feeling like his magic-focused body just isn't built for this. Abel's ready to give up on the whole physical strength thing while his father tells him to quit whining. Shurbai flat out calls Abel a good-for-nothing right before they spot a Shurmu parrot, which the father notes is a pretty delicious bird. Shurbai draws his bow to take the shot, while Abel tells him to stop staring at him and actually focus on the target. The boy misses and the bird immediately counterattacks, sending Shurbai into a screaming panic as it flies straight at him. Seeing the failed shot, the father moves in with a knife, while Abel watches the bird and notices something interesting about it. Abel remembers a past experiment where he used biological magic on a rat and decides this bird would make a great subject for his next project. Just as his father lunges forward, Abel ignores the ban and casts a sleep spell that drops the bird right out of the air. Abel explains that magic works way better on creatures with low resistance. While his father stands there stunned that the boy cast a spell without using any tools at all. The father quickly loses his temper over the broken ban. Even though the spell's success basically makes archery training look pointless, their tense moment gets cut off by massive footsteps shaking the ground, forcing the father to order an immediate full-speed retreat. Sensing real danger, the father tells the group to report to the chief if they don't make it back, but Shurbai refuses to leave him until he's called an idiot and told to move. A gigantic bear monster suddenly crashes through the trees, towering over the hunters with a terrifying roar. The group identifies it as a greater bear, and Shurbai freezes in absolute terror as the beast looms over them. The father tries to strike, but his arrow just bounces off the monster's eyelid, proving its fur is nearly impossible to pierce as Abel readies his magic once more. Ignoring the ban again, Abel casts a sleep spell that successfully forces the massive beast to collapse. Abel breathes a sigh of relief, thinking the threat's over, but he's suddenly startled by a panicked shout from his father. The bear jolts awake and lunges forward, forcing his father to throw himself in front of Abel to take the full brunt of the attack. Abel gets knocked aside and watches in horror as his father collapses to the ground with a severe wound. While the other hunter tries to distract the beast, Abel rushes to his father's side. As the man blames his own carelessness for what just happened, Abel spots a fatal wound in his father's stomach and desperately tries to think of healing magic. While his father tells him to look after Jell and their mother, his father rests a hand on Abel's head, telling the boy he's smart and that he should hold on to the little he managed to teach him. He finds a strange peace, feeling like he's finally done something worthy of a father. Right before Abel recalls a mysterious figure from a memory, the other hunter unleashes a flame spell straight at the monster's face in a desperate attempt to stop it. The fire does nothing, and the hunter realizes the bear's just been playing with them the whole time like they're nothing more than toys. Seeing his father's condition, Abel stands up and turns to face the monster with a cold, determined look. He begins chanting, invoking ancient light characters that make it clear he's preparing something far more advanced than anything seen before. A massive, intricate magic circle forms around Abel as he gets ready to unleash everything he's got against the beast. He studies the monster's thick fur and figures it's probably never felt real pain in its entire life. Abel decides to summon a wind blade with one goal in mind, making this creature feel true pain. While the others watch his power in disbelief, Abel fine-tunes the magic circle as he calculates his next move. Deciding to pour every ounce of his magic power into a single attack, he unleashes a massive wave of energy from the center of the circle, surging forward toward the towering threat. With a determined smile, he commits fully to the strike, ready to release everything he's got against the beast. He figures that even a small injury might force the creature to retreat and quietly plead for it to just give up the chase. A blinding flash floods the area, and as the smoke clears, he shields his eyes in the sudden silence. He stares in stunned silence, realizing the sheer force of his attack has flattened a long stretch of trees deep into the forest. The massive bear suddenly collapses with a heavy thud, leaving the boy completely baffled by the result of his own spell. He stares at the fallen creature, surprised by the outcome since he only meant to scare it off, and realizes his earlier sleep spell training might not have even been necessary. Shaking off the shock, he knows he can't waste time standing around and immediately rushes back to check on his father. Shibby shows up with a big cut of meat from the bear, and Abel asks him to slice it into smaller pieces while he checks on the condition of Sheba's father. Abel reassures the group that the other hunter has no external injuries and should wake up soon thanks to the life-sustaining magic he applied. He looks down at his own father, whose condition is far more critical, and starts forming a magic circle to begin a risky procedure. Using a technique called adaptation, he begins transmuting the bear meat so it can function like human flesh enough to seal the fatal wound. He acknowledges that merging human tissue with a magical creature is basically creating a chimera, and while it's technically a valid medical method, it's illegal in a lot of cities. Despite the huge risk, and this being the first time he's ever done biological magic on a person, he decides they've got no other choice but to move forward. The boy takes a deep breath and starts the delicate ritual to save his father's life. Once the spell's done, his father slips into a deep sleep while Abel collapses to the ground, totally exhausted as the other hunter watches in disbelief. He rests for a moment, hoping there won't be any lasting side effects from the surgery, and realizes he'll have to explain all of this to the chief later. Abel weighs the danger of staying in the forest too long and can't shake the unsettling thought that even bigger monsters might be lurking beyond this territory. He calls out to Shibby for help, laying out his plan to carry both their fathers back to the village using totems. As they head back, the boy apologizes for how he acted earlier in the forest. Abel tells him it's fine and thanks him for providing the energy needed to build enough totems for the trip. The boy hesitates, then admits he used to see Abel as a rival for someone's affection. That leaves Abel confused, running through the few girls he actually knows, before realizing the boy means Gizzle, whom he calls an unreachable flower. He figures the mix-up probably comes from the fact that they're always seen together and that the clan only uses a handful of last names. Abel clarifies that there are actually siblings, which leaves the other boy completely stunned into silence. He sighed to himself, reflecting on how strange it is that he had to clear up such a bizarre misunderstanding. He wonders if they just get along too well as siblings, but immediately shoots down the boy's sudden request to be called brother-in-law. By the time they reach the village at night, a group of worried men with torches greets them, taking in the state of the returning hunters. Abel manages a tired smile right before someone comes running toward them in a frantic rush. Giselle throws herself into his arms, crying with relief that he's safe. While Abel tries to explain to the stunned onlookers that this is just sibling affection, he apologizes for their late return, while Giselle keeps sobbing, looking up at him with tearful eyes. Under the light of the crescent moon, Abel decides he's better suited for magic research back home than dangerous fieldwork. The seasons start to change as time moves on, and the events of that night slowly fade into the past. 2 years pass since the forest incident, and Abel's now reached the age of 15. He reflects on his 15 years in this new world, nodding that in 2 more years, he'll be the same age he was when he died in his old one. Looking up at the sky, he wonders what his old friends from the Black Magic Research Club are up to these days. He thinks about his junior, who might still feel guilty over what happened, and decides to make the most of his second chance while enjoying the morning. Giselle, now 13, walks up and announces that she's finally found him. They stand together in front of a wooden structure as Abel mentions he's recently started a new gardening project. Giselle asks what the project's actually for, and Abel explains that the totem's grown a lot thanks to magic supplements, despite a slow start. Abel points to the structure and explains his plan to smoke the leaves he grew himself for his coming-of-age ceremony. While an older man warns him to brace for the harsh taste, he notes that the flavor changes depending on how it's cultivated, which is why he wanted to try it himself. As Giselle wishes him luck getting a tasty harvest, Abel channels magic energy into the totem, calling it Mr. Mountain, which has Giselle asking why he's giving such a formal title to a wooden structure. He explains that its tall, thin shape reminds him of the senior student who helped him start the Black Magic Research Club back in his old life. Abel reflects on how that person gave him a place to belong at school and always will mean something to him as he tearfully tells a worried Giselle he's just got dirt in his eye. Their conversation gets cut off by a group of youths with the boy in front stepping up and asking if he's really Abel. Abel and Giselle turn to face the newcomers with Abel asking who exactly is standing in front of them. The newcomer mocks Abel for being a shoo-in with no clue about the outside world, then boastfully introduces himself as Nasal Carl. Abel stays silent trying to place the name, which clearly irritates the arrogant boy who was expecting a more respectful reaction. He keeps staring blankly at the group, struggling to find any real significance in the name he was just given. Abel sighs to himself, thinking that maintaining social relationships and dealing with people is way too much of a hassle. Noswell claims he's here to offer some advice to the chief's disciple. But Abel realizes rumors about his private leaf-growing project have already started spreading since the Marin clan doesn't use currency and relies on leaves as money. The Caro house currently holds a monopoly over their cultivation and distribution. Abel quickly puts it together. The Carl family sent their people to check whether his project threatens their business. He reassures Noswell that he's only growing a single totem out of curiosity, which puts the boy's mind at ease over his father's monopoly. Nasal flashes a predatory smirk, already scheming how this could benefit him. While Giselle watches the exchange with obvious discomfort, the newcomer suddenly demands that Giselle become his wife, leaving Abel staring at him in complete disbelief at how absurd the request is. Noswell's companions immediately panic, dragging him back and begging him to apologize before he really sets Abel off and ruins the whole group. They explain the terrifying rumors that Abel turns his enemies into chimeas or totems. And Abel realizes his reputation in the village is way more sinister than he ever imagined. Abel thinks over the rumors floating around about his house that his totems can talk, and that he once took down a massive bear using nothing but magic. Nasal gets visibly irritated and tells his followers to stop overreacting to mere stories, boasting that he too could slay a bear with his own power. That claim gets Abel genuinely excited, thinking he might finally found a fellow magic enthusiast in this era. Noswell jabs a finger at him, demanding Abel step forward and show proper respect since the eldest heir of the Carl family is talking to him. Gizel hides behind Abel in fear while he decides to set aside his annoyance and try a civil conversation with someone he thinks shares his interests. Abel enthusiastically approaches Noswell to talk technical magic theory, asking for advice on built-in magic circles and specific cultivation paints, which just creeps the boy out. Noswell panics at the sudden closeness and shoves Abel away hard enough to send him crashing into the dirt, while Gizel cries out in concern. Abel struggles to spit sand out of his mouth as Noswell scoffs, concluding that the terrifying rumors were clearly just lies about a pathetic shooting. Noswell turns his attention to the wooden structure and mockingly informs Abel that he's been cultivating his totem all wrong, leaving the young researcher in shock. Abel insists he followed his research to the letter, but Noswell claims his family would never overlook such a flaw and offers to demonstrate the right way. A magic circle forms in Noswell's hand as he smirks, calling up the power of a wind blade to prove his point. The concentrated blast of wind slams directly into the totem, while Noswell watches on with a predatory look of superiority. Abel watches in stunned silence as the attack tears straight through the structure he worked so hard to grow. Noswell bursts out laughing over the destroyed totem while his panicked friends beg for forgiveness, trying to distance themselves from the whole thing. Abel stares at the wreckage of his project in a dark daze. And even as Gizel tries to comfort him, he coldly says he's seen enough. The scene shifts to the depths of the East Forest, where Abel resolves to take his next project to a whole new level of thoroughness. A young boy weeps while working with a knife, complaining about how cruel Abel is for putting him through this labor. Abel sits nearby, telling the boy to stop talking and focus on carving, explaining he sent Gizel home to spare her from the hard work. The boy's terrified. This plan will bankrupt the Carl house. But Abel clarifies his real motivation is avenging the destruction of Mr. Mountain. Abel looks up at the forest canopy and asks the boy if he really understands why leaves are so valuable in their society. Abel explains that the Carl house keeps its power by tightly controlling the leaf market and that cultivation's actually simple if the magic supply stays stable. This economic grip clashes with the village chief's plan to use magic or as currency instead, since leaves get consumed the moment they're used. The boy realizes the deep hostility between the two sides comes straight from this power struggle, one the chief can't easily break even with his authority to crack the monopoly wide open. Abel reveals his plan. Mass-produce high-quality leaves using forest trees as massive totems and gut Carl's political power by flooding the market with better products at lower prices. He plans to crash the value of Carl's leaves completely. When the boy questions how just two people could pull this off, Abel warns that failure could mean Gizel gets forced into marrying into the Carl family. Hearing that Giselle's caught Noswell's interest sends the boy into a fury, and he immediately commits to the plan to make sure their rivals go down. Caught up in the excitement, the boy starts calling Abel his brother-in-law, which earns him a sharp reprimand to knock it off. 3 intense days of labor pass as the two of them keep working deep in the woods on several large structures. From a nearby thicket, Noswell watches through a telescope, nodding Abel's genuine anger while his companions tremble at the sight of the entrance totems. One of his followers panics at the thought of a totem attack, but Nasal bursts out laughing after taking a closer look at the situation. He mocks his men for their fear, explaining the structures are just scarecrows and leaf-gathering totems incapable of attacking anyone. Nazil writes the whole operation off as a fool's errand, since cultivating on that scale would normally take 20 men with serious magic power. Even after his lackeys remind him the chief respects Abel's strength, Ines will suspect some hidden scheme involving secret help from the old man. He orders his followers to stake out the chief's house to block any magical assistance, completely missing the truth about Abel's real potential. In reality, Abel's constant training since defeating the Great Bear 2 years ago has given him more than enough capacity to sustain over 50 growing totems all on his own. 2 weeks later, The forest is packed with towering totems as the group celebrates the success of their massive crop. The boy is stunned by what they've pulled off, while Abel admits he expected no swell to interfere and is honestly surprised nothing's happened yet. Abel proudly introduces the new structures as Mr. Mountain numbers 2 and 3, announcing it's finally time to harvest their high-quality leaves. The work wraps up under a wide-open sky as the team gets ready to move forward with their plan to shake up the local economy. Earlier at the chief's residence, Noswell's henchmen realize that neither the village leader nor Abel have been seen leaving the place for days. Nswell demands a report on the Bleck house, only to learn that Giselle's been seen out and about. But Abel's nowhere to be found, leading him to assume the boys finally admitted defeat. Their spying gets interrupted when Phiro and her wolf companions suddenly show up, demanding to know why they're loitering outside her home. And the men nervously claim they're just looking for Abel. Hearing that Abel hasn't visited her in a while visibly shocks the spies who'd expected the two to be conspiring together. As the massive wolf lets out a menacing growl, the cowards quickly make excuses and flee the area in a panic. Despite his frustration with the animal, Noswell's satisfied with the intel, concluding that Abel isn't getting help from the chief and must just be sulking over his useless totems. He flashes a sinister grin, confident that nobody in the region can touch the Carlco house. When it comes to leaf production, Phiro watches them retreat from a distance. Growing suspicious that the heir of the Carl family would personally bother lingering near her house over something Abel did, she thinks about how close Abel and Giselle are and realizes that despite his coming-of-age ceremony being right around the corner, his recent behavior's been incredibly strange. In the end, she shrugs it off, deciding that whatever the boy's up to has nothing to do with her. Back at the Blee house, a man takes a puff from his pipe and reacts with immediate surprise at the flavor. He remarks that today's batch of leaves is exceptional, prompting the woman nearby to ask what's different about it this time. While Abel quietly celebrates his success nearby, the man confirms this is the best quality he's ever smoked. With final prep for the massive harvest complete, Abel sets his sights on the trade market, which will serve as the battlefield on the very same day as his coming-of-age ceremony. Facing the looming economic clash with Nozell and the Caro family, Abel firmly declares that the war has officially begun. The ceremony finally kicks off under a large tent, with Abel taking part in the traditional rites while a crowd of villagers looks on. He follows the customary steps, smoking from the ritual pipe as the smoke drifts high into the sky above the village. Once the formalities wrap up, the boy lets out an exhausted sigh, struggling with the weight and heat of the ceremonial headgear. A man named Jirius stops by to offer congratulations, and as Abel asks Giselle for help removing his heavy outfit, Gary laughs and jokes that the two of them look like a pair of newlyweds. Abel tells him to knock it off, but the man keeps teasing, asking when the actual wedding will be, leaving Giselle deeply embarrassed and flustered. As the celebration continues, Gary asks about the whereabouts of the boy's helper, only to learn their partner Shurbai has already gone ahead to grab a stall at the town market. Gary is immediately impressed by the sample he's given, though the boy admits that while he likes the scent, he's still not quite used to the actual smoke. Their conversation gets cut off when Shurbai comes rushing back into the tent in a panic, ready to deliver an urgent apology about the situation at the market. Shurbai explains he found a prime unoccupied spot and started setting up their goods before realizing the real reason it was empty. Arriving at the site, the boy looks over the empty space and realizes Shibby's accidentally snagged the most high-traic spot in the whole market. Despite the obvious nerves from his friends, the boy's full of energy, declaring they're staying put and selling every last bundle of their harvest. He looks over the incense bundles and figures the spot was probably left vacant because other merchants are too scared to get in the Carlco family's way. While he sees this as the perfect chance to escalate the conflict, his partner's terrified, convinced there's no way they'll get away with such a bold move. He tries to calm his friend's nerves, explaining that the best customers are all concentrated right here, though the guy stays skeptical about how safe this really is. 10 minutes pass in total silence as the group sits at their stall, realizing not a single customer is willing to come near them, even with crowds everywhere else. Realizing they need a new approach, the boy asks Giselle to grab the red and blue totems he made the day before, calling them his secret weapons. The tension spikes when Noswell struts up to the stall, arrogantly demanding a bundle, while acting surprised that the boy actually managed to mass-produce the leaves. Looking over the stock, the rival heir considers digging into who helped the boy pull this off, but quickly writes it off as pointless. Noswell mocks the boy's work, claiming his own family's leaves are a premium product built on years of tradition and technique that some commoner could never match. The boy fires back, asking if using shady magic on totems really counts as tradition, which frustrates Noswell into dropping a coin and demanding service like any paying customer. After tossing down a single copper for a bundle, Noswell grins wickedly and lets the leaves scatter across the dirt. He goes on to stomp the product into the ground, laughing the whole time before turning to the crowd to make a public scene. Nasal issues a cold warning to everyone watching, making it clear that anyone who dares buy from this stall will answer to his family. The threat sends potential customers scattering instantly, leaving the boy frustrated until Giselle shows up with the totems right at the perfect moment. With the devices finally in hand, the boy explains that the red totems enchanted to boost sales, while the blue ones built to draw customers in. He notices the rival stall's customers growing impatient with the slow service and figures they can flip the situation using their superior flavor and lower prices. He tells his companions they just need a few initial buyers to turn the tide, though he admits this whole strategy isn't actually based on real magic. He reveals he adapted the idea from a beckoning cat totem he read about in a book, admitting the magic circle he used had no measurable effect and might just carry some unknown hidden power. Giselle stares back, totally confused by the term, while the boy stays hopeful the totem will still work its charm on the crowd. He asks if the idea sounds fascinating, but his partner is far from impressed, shaking him violently and questioning his sanity. Their chaos gets cut short when a man's voice calls out from the edge of the stall to announce his arrival. The newcomer turns out to be the father of the boy's partner, thanking him for the samples given earlier. He reports that everyone who tried the test product loved it, and now wants to buy enough bundles to build up a serious personal stash. The man gestures toward a group of friends heading their way, all eager to grab some of the harvest for themselves. Seeing an actual crowd of eager buyers arriving at once leaves the whole group stunned by their sudden change in luck. The villagers quickly swarm the stall in excitement, praising the quality of the goods while realizing the boys behind all of it. As customers start sampling the product, they remark their old supplies taste like moldy leaves in comparison, all while marveling at how cheap the bundles are. The pleasant smell spreads through the market, catching the attention of passers-by and leaving the rival heir fuming as he watches his influence slip away. One customer is so impressed he buys 50 bundles on the spot, wondering out loud if it's even fair to sell such high-quality goods this cheap. Word spreads fast, sending a massive surge of people abandoning the surrounding stalls to rush toward theirs instead. The crowd turns into a frenzy, people shouting for service and fighting for their spot in line. The rival heir watches in a rage, realizing his earlier threats to the villagers are being completely ignored as everyone clamors to buy from the boy. With demand skyrocketing, the boy has Giselle keep restocking from the storehouse while he tries to manage the chaos, getting customers to form organized lines. A woman named Fo shows up to help with crowd control, while the rival heir's subordinates desperately suggest cutting their own prices to stay competitive. He refuses, insisting his father ordered them to hold the current price no matter what. Tension in the line spikes when a man tries calling out someone for cutting, only to freeze the moment he sees exactly who he's talking to. Not yet seeing the man's face, the boy politely asks him to wait in line, assuming it's just Noswell trying to interfere again. The man reveals himself as Norman Carl, the current head of the rival family, catching the boy completely off guard with his sudden appearance. Noswell's terrified at the sight of his father and starts stammering immediately, while the boy calmly introduces himself as Abel. The elder Karlko ignores his son's panic, fixing a cold stare on the young merchant running the stall. A heavy silence falls over the market as the family head surveys the empty rival stall before turning his full attention back to Abel and his companions. The man recognizes the name and asks if this is the totem-crazed member of the Blake family he's heard about. Abel's annoyed by the strange reputation, but the older man suddenly starts chuckling before bursting into loud, mocking laughter. He keeps laughing hysterically at the boy's identity, leaving Abel wondering if the man's lost his mind. The laughter seems to take a physical toll as he clutches his head, grinning wildly. The laughter cuts off abruptly when the family head collapses to the ground, sending his son rushing over in a panic. The son blames Abel for the incident, claiming his father has a fragile constitution and demands to know how he'll pay for the damage. Blind with rage, the heir draws a weapon and lunges forward, threatening to kill. Sensing real danger, the boy shouts for everyone nearby to back off as the confrontation turns violent. Giselle screams out in worry for her brother as the crowd watches the two of them face off in the middle of the clearing. Spectators mock the Karl family's leadership while Phiro frantically asks her grandfather if they should step in to stop the fight. The grandfather stays unconcerned, trusting Abel to hold back, while Abel decides to wait for his opponent to strike first so he can claim self-defense. Despite the heir's boasting about his power, Abel keeps his focus sharp to avoid getting caught off guard while the heir screams about his own importance and activates a light spell. Abel's surprised to see an unencrypted magic circle, realizing that no matter how the formula is rewritten, the underlying structure is fundamentally flawed. Abel concludes the magic being used is a complete fake, while the grandfather explains that unlike his skilled father, the heir is just an incompetent blockhead who's never put in any real effort. The boy reflects that a magic tool can only amplify power that's already there. It can't make up for a lack of real skill. The heir launches a fireball with a loud shout, and Abel decides it's time to stop holding back against such aggressive play. Abel counters by calling up the earth itself, a massive structure beginning to rise from the ground. A towering stone pillar erupts between the two of them, completely shifting the momentum of the fight. The massive stone totem looms over the heir, who stands frozen in shock at the sheer scale of what's just been created. Abel commands the totem, which he calls Yamasan No. 4, to advance, sending the heir into pure panic. The heir screams in terror as the giant stone figure relentlessly chases him across the field. The grandfather remarks that this is hardly what he'd call holding back. While Abel taunts the heir to attack from any direction he likes, Abel suspects the fleeing heir is still trying to bait him into dropping his guard and vows not to fall for it. The heir's desperate pleas for help from someone named Ines will finally make Abel pause in confusion, realizing the boy might actually be in real trouble. It turns out the heir was just bluffing about his abilities all along, and the story jumps forward 10 days. Word of the superior incense leaves spreads through the village, crashing the Karlko family's prices and finally freeing the workers they'd been exploiting. Abel feels a slight pang of guilt over the family's downfall and visits the heir with a gift from his father, only to be met with another fit of screaming terror. Despite the heir's history of making money without lifting a finger, Abel hopes they can learn to live properly and even invites the terrified boy Noswell to join him for a hunt. The boy watches Noswell flee in a state of terror before heading off to meet the chieftain and hand over the paperwork for managing the village fields. He looks out toward the horizon, reflecting on the sizable fortune he's already built from selling his high-quality incense leaves. Diving into a new venture, he starts technical research, but quickly realizes his current prototype isn't performing the way he expected. He explains to Gizel that the emict or can't handle magic power stress for long periods, meaning the machine still needs work even though she thinks it looks done. Since Marin Village's rough terrain makes local produce expensive, he plans to build a tractor to help expand their farming capacity. He sees this totem truck as the crucial first step toward that goal and decides he needs to redesign the device from the ground up. Working underneath the vehicle, he suggests Giselle go play with her friends instead of just watching him, but she insists watching his work is entertaining enough. She gives him a warm smile, telling him that as long as she has her brother by her side, she's completely happy. The boy notes that 14-year-old Giselle has always stuck close to him, barely bothering with anyone outside the family unless she absolutely has to. Later that night, the boy approaches his father to talk about something serious, though his father jokingly assumes it's about the incense business. He admits that while his dad's happy about their new wealth, he hopes they don't get greedy like the Karlko family before clarifying he actually wants to talk about Giselle. His father notes that she'll also become an adult in 2 years and asks when the ceremony's happening, leaving the boy confused about which ceremony they're even discussing. The boy is stunned when his father clarifies he means the wedding ceremony between him and Giselle. He frantically points out that they're blood-related siblings, but his father responds with total indifference like that changes nothing at all. His father explains it's a Marin clan custom for siblings born less than 5 years apart to marry once the brother becomes an adult, sending the boy into pure shock. He repeats the idea of marrying his own sister in total disbelief. While his father seems baffled by his son's extreme reaction, when asked if he's simply unwilling, the boy argues the whole concept is fundamentally wrong. Even as he recalls villagers previously asking about the wedding date, while Giselle blushed, he finally realizes the strange behavior from villagers was all because of this custom. While he struggles to explain his belief that marriage should unite different families, his horror peaks when his father reveals he also married his own little sister, pushing the boy to desperately ask if marrying outside the family is even a legal option. The father explains the Marin clan keeps this tradition alive to strengthen the magic power of their offspring, which the boy finds hypocritical considering his father always valued hunting over magic. The father notes the boy's intense dislike for the idea, mentioning he thought the boy always doted on Giselle. But the boy clarifies his affections strictly that of an older brother. His father brushes off the protest, saying the boy is now an adult of the clan and should use this moment to grow up, leaving him standing in stunned silence. By the next morning, the boy realizes that given village customs and his father's personality, wedding preparations are undoubtedly about to begin. He resolves to stop the marriage no matter what, but wonders if Giselle even knows what's going on. He reflects on how his obsession with magic left him blind to the world's common sense, and assumes Giselle's probably in the same boat. He recalls how Shirbai and NSL both approached her in the past, realizing now that NSL probably tried to marry her just to spite him, though she never gave either of them any attention. Firmly believing siblings should never marry, he decides to team up with her to convince their father and the villagers to drop the whole plan. Just as he settles on his plan, Giselle approaches with a cheerful morning greeting that sends him into a visible panic. She asks if he stayed up all night again, teasing him playfully about having a delicate body and forbidding him from overworking despite how effective potions are. When she asks to be the first to ride the new machine, he confirms he finished the final adjustments just moments ago. He explains that switching the power source from EMT to LEDA or will let the vehicle run for much longer stretches. Before they head into the test run, he stops her, saying he needs to talk to her about something surprising right away. He tentatively brings up the marriage, but his heart sinks the moment she responds that she's absolutely overjoyed. She admits she thought the proposal would come much later after his coming-of-age ceremony, and is surprised he brought it up so soon himself. While she gushes about how deeply moved she is by his supposed proposal, the boy is left speechless and trembling with confusion. She reveals that their mother told her about this destiny 10 years ago, and that she's dreamed of the day she could finally call herself his wife. The boy is paralyzed by the realization that his sister has been anticipating this marriage for an entire decade. She explains how she understood his passion for magic and planned to wait until his heart was ready to start a family, leaving him in a state of frantic disbelief. Desperate to escape the conversation, he claims the machine still needs fine-tuning and makes an excuse about needing to see the chieftain right away. He adds he has urgent business about the incense leaves and bolts off as fast as he can, leaving Giselle staring after him in silence. The urgency ramps up when the announcement comes that the wedding ceremony will happen in just 3 days, leaving Giselle shocked by the sudden timeline. Watching her daughter, the mother expresses concern that Abel seems completely uninterested, worried his unusual personality might be causing a rift between them. The father brushes off the worry, confident the boy will get swept along with events and settle into the arrangement once the ceremony's done. Looking for a temporary escape, the boy visits the chieftain tentatively, trying to bring up the incense leaf fields as a professional excuse. But his mental exhaustion is obvious, and he asks to postpone the discussion so he can clear his head, a request the chieftain calmly accepts. Retreating to a quiet book storage room, the boy sits alone among the shelves and floating totems. Mulling over his difficult situation, he reflects that his struggle comes from clinging to the customs of his old world, making him feel like an outsider with strange values compared to everyone around him. Watching the local patterns, he thinks about the village belief that souls get recycled into spirits after death, a concept that defines their whole worldview. That belief feels fundamentally hollow to him, since he still carries clear memories of a past life in another world entirely, a secret he fears no one would understand. He blames his current mess on his own procrastination, wondering if just accepting the marriage would let his life finally settle into something normal. His thoughts turn to Giselle, realizing that while he's just a magic-obsessed student, she spent her whole life being told marrying her brother was her only destiny. He worries that if things keep going this way, she'll never form real connections with anyone else, a thought he believes would hurt her in the long run. As he clutches his head in frustration, a floating totem accidentally knocks a heavy scroll off the shelf, and it lands with a thud right beside him. Checking the fallen document, he's surprised to find it's a detailed map of the lands beyond the village boundaries. The discovery sparks a sudden firm resolve. He has to leave the village to solve this problem. He immediately starts gathering books and totems, figuring his disappearance will force his parents to drop the plan and push Giselle to interact with other people. As he rushes out, the chieftain calls from the balcony to remind him to return the borrowed items, and the boy gives a strained, uncertain apology. On his way out, he unexpectedly runs into Fo, who stops him to offer her congratulations on his upcoming marriage. Completely caught off guard, he frantically asks her how she could have heard about the wedding already. She reveals his father's been going around telling everyone in the village, and the boy realizes his father is deliberately trying to trap him before he can escape. Trying to hide his panic, he claims he was just talking to himself, quickly thanks Fo for everything, then runs off, leaving her confused by his strange departure. Fo watches him leave with a sense of unease, feeling like his words sounded almost like a goodbye while the boy makes it back home to start his preparations. Once inside, he tells his father he'll be staying in his room to focus on research about the incense leaves and asks not to be disturbed. He slams his bedroom door shut, prompting his father to complain about the attitude before eventually letting it slide. Noticing the boy's seclusion, Giselle decides to press on with the wedding preparations on her own. While inside his room, he's frantically packing his things. A knock at the door startles him as Giselle offers to bring him food, but he lies, saying he already ate at the chieftain's place to keep her from coming in. Sensing his tension, she voices her worry through the door, pleading with him to be careful and not push himself to collapse. He manages to reassure her enough to settle her worries, and once he hears her, walk away. He lets out a heavy sigh of relief for dodging discovery. As night falls over the house, the boy waits quietly for the village to settle down so he can move into the next phase of his plan. He spends the late hours writing a farewell letter, explaining he's leaving until he hears Giselle's married or until he finds a path of his own. Standing ready with his gear, he uses his magic tool to command a set of floating totems to grab his bags and help with the heavy lifting. He carefully sneaks out of his room, slipping through the dark hallways and successfully making it outside without waking his parents. Looking back at the house, he thinks about all the times he snuck out before and realizes this will be the very last time. Reaching a large stone transport, he loads his supplies onto the vehicle and uses his wand to start it up for the journey. As the machine starts moving through the forest, he thinks through the fallout of his disappearance, guessing Giselle's going to be furious with him. He thinks about the Marin clan's strict laws forbidding anyone from leaving without permission, knowing rule breakers are often barred from ever coming back. The weight of his exile starts to sink in, and he tears up, hoping that one day he might at least see her from a distance once she has her own family. After traveling through the night, he wakes up with a wide yawn as the morning sun rises over the horizon. He checks a map to gauge his progress and figures that at his current pace, he should be nearing a nearby lake soon. His thoughts turn toward the city of Lamar, a major trading hub where he hopes to find foreign goods and rare magic tools that just aren't available back home. He's filled with excitement as the journey continues until a sudden jarring impact throws his machine off balance. He groans in pain from the crash, horrified to find his totem trucks completely broken down and smoking. Back at the village, discovering his empty room sparks immediate outrage, his family realizing Abel's actually run off. His father's furious. He left without even a note. While Gizzle suggests he's probably just testing his new totem and will be back soon. When his father proposes forming a search party with the chieftain, Gizzle stops him, insisting it be a shame to cause such a scene and that everything will be fine. Hidden from view, Gizzle's hand tightens around the very letter the boy had meant to leave behind for them. With a cold, unsettling smile, she tells her father she has absolute faith in her brother. Far off in the forest, the boy stands frozen in shock, staring at the extent of the damage to his transport. He discovers that a crucial part of the magic circle, the one he specifically upgraded to Lita, has been forced back to EMTT. Realization washes over his face as he starts piecing together how such a specific mechanical failure could even happen. He recalls the only person he discussed the limits of EMTT and his upgrade plans with, Gizzle. He remembers her warning him not to collapse on his journey and suddenly understands the real meaning behind those words. Weighing his options, he realizes reaching Lamar is now impossible and heading back to the village would leave him totally exhausted. He suspects Giselle saw right through his escape plan and chose this quiet way to sabotage him, forcing him into a corner. He realizes that if he's caught and branded a rule breaker, he'll never get another chance to leave the village again. He fears his father will use this whole thing as an excuse to force him into marrying Gizzle, tying him down to their home for good. Despair sets in as he considers that going back now would mean giving up on ever chasing his freedom again. Despite the sabotage, he stays determined to see the magical world that's out there. Refusing to accept a forced marriage, he breaks down in tears at the thought of his dreams of a magical life ending within the walls of his tiny village. Stuck between a broken machine and a far-off destination, the boy struggles to find the strength to keep going. A girl with horns shouts out, asking if he's feeling unwell. While a horse-drawn carriage waits on the path behind her, the boy is completely stunned and tearful. Realizing a horse-drawn carriage has actually shown up right in front of him, he desperately chases after it to ask their destination, and the driver tells him they're heading toward Lamar. Overjoyed that he's saved, he decides he's not going back to the village and secures a spot in the baggage area of the carriage. During the ride, the driver asks what he's doing out there and the boy explains he ran away because he couldn't see eye to eye with his family, which has a girl named Maya comparing his situation to her own. She explains she forced the peddler James to take her along, crying until he finally agreed to let her leave her village with him. Maya explains she's from the Doom clan and reveals that the missing magical crystal on her forehead has caused her serious problems. She describes how Doom clan members are supposed to have horns and a forehead crystal, but hers peeled off after her mother took a fall during pregnancy. The boy is shocked to learn the crystal can peel off like a scab and never grow back, which got her mocked as a no-stone since birth. She recounts how even her own mother scorned her over the condition until she finally lost her temper and yelled right back at her. She shows off a bag of her mother's secret savings, which she took as payback for the way she had been treated, much to the young traveler's shock. While Maya happily looks forward to seeing the world with James, the group suddenly spots several figures emerging from the forest. 3 ferocious magical wolves with jagged crystals on their backs block the road, growling at the travelers. James identifies them as Garm while Maya screams in terror as the carriage horse starts to panic. A quick aside explains that magic beasts are unpredictable natural disasters born from sudden surges of wild magic power. As Maya begs James to speed up, he explains these D-rank hazards are far more dangerous than the bears near the boys' home village. The driver considers tossing out luggage to distract the pack while the boy brings up a dog he is back home. But James tells him to focus on the danger at hand. Remembering the boys from the Marin clan, James asks if he can use magic, and the boy confirms he's got a modest amount of skill. James tells him to use whatever he's got to scare off the Gar, prompting the boy to draw his wand and start chanting, shaping the earth itself. A massive pillar of earth erupts from the road, launching the pursuing wolves high into the air as the carriage makes its escape. His companions are left speechless by the scale of the magic, with Mayer remarking on the sheer intensity of the Marin clan, while the boy asks if that display was enough. After the chaos finally settled down, the group took a break to rest and eat by the riverside as the day began turning toward evening. As the carriage continues its journey the next day, the peddler announces their destination has finally come into view. The travelers look toward the horizon as the massive walled city of Lamar comes into sight, marking the end of their long road together. Reaching the outskirts, Maya is thrown into total panic. Realizing this is where the group is meant to split up. The boy reasons they'd just be a burden to a peddler's trade, while the driver apologizes for not clarifying things sooner. While the boy shakes hands with James to thank him for their safety, Maya suddenly realizes she's got a way to keep them all together. She pulls out a heavy bag of coins, offering to buy up all of the peddler's wheat so he'll have no reason to keep moving, much to the boy's confusion. James politely turns down the offer, prompting Maya to desperately beg the boy not to abandon her, and he admits he doesn't really have any other plans anyway. Taking advantage of his open schedule, she insists on learning more about magic and the advanced totem engraving methods she heard about earlier. The boy figures having a familiar face around will make navigating the new city easier, even though she slept through most of his lectures during the trip. Thrilled, he agreed. She pledges her full support, even offering to spend her savings on anything he wants as they step through the city gates. Walking through the crowded streets, the boy's amazed by the stark contrast between the bustling city and the quiet life back in his village. His attention gets grabbed by a specific storefront, his eyes lighting up with curiosity and excitement. They step into a magic and alchemy shop called Chimera's Tale, where his focus immediately locks onto a massive, unassuming piece of wood. The shopkeeper walks over, complimenting his sharp eye, nodding that while the object's been sitting there forever, he's the first person to show any real interest. When the boy asks if it's just a plain tree trunk, the woman corrects him, revealing it's actually a branch from a legendary world tree. She explains its history, saying it was recovered 5 years ago from the dangerous forest of magic by a party that suffered near total losses. Hearing that the lone survivor sold it for a hefty price, the boy becomes mesmerized by the overwhelming magical energy leaking through its barriers. He starts thinking about the power a totem made from such material could hold, but his comment leaves the shopkeeper puzzled. She's never heard of such a tool. The shopkeeper pulls out a bottle of unicorn blood as a possible ingredient, leaving him stunned by its rarity harvested during a massive monster panic. When she suggests using it as paint, the boy realizes pairing it with the world tree branch would create an unmatched tool. But he's floored by the price tag, over 2 million gold. He admits he's flat broke right now, explaining the incense leaves he brought to trade are actually banned substances in this kingdom. While he's lamenting his inability to sell his stock, Maya cuts in, slamming a heavy bag of jewels onto the counter and asking if it will cover the cost. The shopkeeper's delighted at the sight of such wealth and offers to make the trade. While the boy frantically tries to stop Maya from being so reckless with her savings, despite his protests over such a massive spend, she insists on going through with the purchase, and the shopkeeper throws in a minor discount that barely counts as a bargain. Maya stays unfazed by the cost, as the merchant reminds them just how rare the wood is, leaving the boy completely overwhelmed by the scale of the deal. As they head out back at their lodging, Maya dives onto the soft bedding with pure excitement. Clearly loving the comforts of the city, the boy sits nearby, feeling the weight of his debt after she even covered his room and board, staring at the legendary materials he's just acquired. He recalls the shopkeeper's promise to pay double for the finished product if he can successfully boost the value of the World Tree branch. While Maya celebrates sleeping in a real bed for the first time, the boy focuses on his investment, determined to craft something that will settle his debt and secure his future. With a carving tool in hand, he gets to work on the massive branch, driven by a deep sense of responsibility to repay his companion. After hours of labor, the transformation's complete. A primitive yet intricately carved totem mask. Thrilled with the result, he calls it a top-tier masterpiece that will give him incredible control and utility. The exhaustion of working all night suddenly catches up with him, and dizziness hits as he tries to stand. Startled, Maya cries out his name in a panic as the boy collapses onto the floor. The scene abruptly shifts to a small storage shed where he recalls his truck breaking down on his initial journey toward the city. He struggles to move, realizing he's bound and lying in a pile of straw inside the cramped space. A young woman enters carrying a tray, addressing him as her brother and expressing relief that he's finally regained consciousness. She apologizes for the rough treatment, explaining she restrained him purely to stop him from doing anything reckless again. Continuing from his sudden capture, the young woman pleads with him not to act so recklessly again while he struggles to recover. Realizing she's mistaken his desperate escape with the truck for some kind of experiment, he stares at her in disbelief, convinced this kind of misunderstanding shouldn't even be possible given the circumstances of his flight. As she serves him a meal, he thinks back to the letter he left and concludes Giselle was the only one who could have tampered with his vehicle. While she explains that in the Marin clan, a wife's expected to prepare the food. Frozen with sudden dread, he realizes that accepting this meal from Giselle would mark a point of no return for his future. He bows his head, sincerely apologizing for leaving without a word, explaining his mind was too consumed by other things at the time to think about the consequences. He confesses he's fundamentally different from a typical member of the Marin clan and admits he'd always meant to explain his unique perspective to her. Eventually, to his surprise, she claims to understand exactly where he's coming from, addressing him with deep respect, leaving him momentarily stunned by her calm. She gently insists he at least drink some water for his own sake, a request he quickly agrees to. As he drinks deeply from the pot, she watches him closely, reaffirming her supposed understanding of his situation. She smiles brightly, suggesting her brother's simply overwhelmed by recent events, though he reacts with confusion to her tone. Without warning, her demeanor shifts. She apologizes, then drives a blade toward him, tearing a sharp cry of pain from the restrained boy. While he gasps in agony, she calmly casts a sealing spell on his wound to stop him from bleeding out or escaping. The boy lets out a blood-curdling scream as the physical and mental shock of the betrayal takes hold. She reassures him she'll be there even if he loses the ability to walk. While he realizes his tongue is paralyzed, the water he just drank was poisoned. As she vows to never leave his side, he frantically tries to summon any kind of magic to fight off the paralysis before his legs become permanently useless. Right as a familiar voice calls out for Abel, the nightmare ends as Abel wakes up in his actual room, finding a worried Maya asking if magicians normally chant spells and talk in their sleep. Looking around, the two of them find massive complex magic circles that have formed across the walls and ceiling. Abel sits up, wondering if he made these unconsciously, while a terrified Maya points out that magic this powerful could theoretically level anything in its path. All he can do is let out a dry laugh at the sheer scale of his own talent, while she begs him to dispel the sinister-looking magic right away. Abel apologizes and dispels the arrays, explaining they were just a byproduct of his terrifying dream. Though he admits it was serious, he nearly wiped out the entire surrounding region. Abel struggles to recall the details of his nightmare, while Maya confirms his fever's finally broken. After learning he'd been out cold for a day and a half, He expresses his gratitude for the care she gave him during his recovery. Looking for a way to repay her, he considers selling a piece of the world tree to raise a serious amount of money. But seeing how emotional she gets at the thought of him selling her gift, he quickly decides to hold on to it. The conversation turns to their dwindling funds and the growing need to cover their boarding fees. At the inn, Maya suggests checking out the local adventurer support center, a place where people can trade hunted magic beast parts for money while helping protect the town. Eager to solve their money troubles, the two agree to head there the next morning to check it out. Meanwhile, back in Marin Village, the community deals with the fallout of the boys' departure for Lamar. A search team sent out by the chieftain eventually finds the abandoned truck, but decides to call off the search after reading the messages he left behind. Back in the village, Gizel's become a recluse, spending her days in isolation as she grapples with the fact that he hasn't returned like she expected. Her family watches on with concern, pitying her visible despair as she quietly mourns the absence of the one she calls her brother. Alone in her room, she questions why he'd choose to stay away, clinging to a remnant of their shared past. A sudden crack echoes through the room as her grip on the object in her hands grows dangerously tight. While her father watches in terror from the doorway, she begins violently dismantling it, claiming with a chilling calm that she isn't actually angry. Outside, a mysterious dark entity floats toward the window, whispering that a method's finally been found to solve her problem. The shadow promises this new way will let her finally get the boy she wants. A proposal she meets with cold, focused intensity. The next day at the Adventurer Support Center, the boy asks Maya if she's got enough magical capability to fight magic beasts. She cryptically mentions that her magic was disliked by those around her, prompting him to realize he should probably avoid prying into her clan's history. As they're called up to the counter, admitting they're newcomers from the countryside, the pair asks the receptionist to explain the Scent's core functions and responsibilities. After getting his credentials, the boy reveals he registered under the name MT Mountain, explaining to a confused Maya that he chose it on a sudden impulse. The Adventurer Support Center runs on three main goals: exterminating magic beasts, aiding adventurers, and scouting new talent across the various cities where it operates. To support this, the organization issues a credentials card that tracks an adventurer's deeds with significant achievements, bumping up their rank. While reaching a high rank comes with special perks and royal job offers. The boy admits he's got zero interest in climbing the ladder. He values his freedom over any obligations that come with it. Looking at his new card, he mentions a benefactor named Mr. Mountain, a name that leaves Maya visibly confused. He explains this figure once saved his life by burning down a swarm of magic beasts and healing his fatal wounds, leaving her wondering what kind of monsters could have ever pushed him that far. In truth, he's privately thinking back to his past life where a god-tier player in an online game shared that name, and it became the inspiration for his current alias. Still clueless about the truth, Maya stares at the card in awe, concluding that everyone from the Marin clan must be incredibly strong. The pair starts reviewing a map to pick their first hunting spot, but their discussion's abruptly cut off by a loud shout telling them to wait. They look over to see a blonde adventurer desperately apologizing to his companion after some kind of disagreement. Things take an unexpected turn when a woman named Lisa declares she'll leave the party if a man named Tide leaves and chooses that exact moment to confess her love for him. As Teed reciprocates and the two embrace, the blonde party leader awkwardly claims he loves them both too, leaving the two onlookers completely speechless. The couple walks off in a passionate gaze while the leader's left devastated on the ground, prompting Maya to innocently wish them future happiness. Noticing the man's pathetic state as he weeps nearby, the boy warns Maya to look away and avoid getting dragged into his drama. The weeping man suddenly regains his composure and walks over, claiming he just cut some useless members from his team and invites the duo to join him since he's in desperate need of magicians. He tries to sweeten the deal by offering to cover all their travel expenses and promises a tip about an exceptionally valuable hunting spot. The two eventually agree and board a horse-drawn carriage headed toward the mysterious location the leader mentioned. During the ride, the man identifies their destination as the Zasham ruins, explaining that the recent lifting of ancient barriers has made the area a prime but time-sensitive hunting ground. He gives a bit of history on the ruins, describing them as a former elven fortress built 20,000 years ago during a religious conflict, which eventually fell into decay after the elves left. The boy wonders if they're chasing a legendary treasure called the Arrow of God. But the man suggests there's something far more certain waiting inside. The leader explains the magic stones powering the ruins' defenses are valuable on their own, assuring a curious Maya that this mission will be simple and profitable. The blond man proudly declares himself an almost E-rank adventurer and the official leader of their group. While Maya's confused about when that got decided, the boy stays indifferent, fine with it as long as the man keeps footing the bill. Their arrival at the ruins is met with immediate frustration as a loud shout of disappointment echoes through the night. Sitting around a campfire near the site, the man vents about a local investigation team, accusing them of being arrogant just because they've got a powerful lord backing them. He recalls the guards being completely unapproachable, sternly ordering them to leave and insisting no outsiders are allowed into the ruins. The boy reasons that a lord sitting on something this valuable would never willingly share it, which explains why word hasn't reached the support center yet. When the leader asks if they're giving up, the boy points out that the tight security makes a legal way in nearly impossible. The leader argues that adventure and trouble go hand in hand, suggesting patience will eventually reveal an opening right before a sudden, menacing growl interrupts him from the darkness. Recognizing the screech of a magic beast, the leader sees a perfect chance to show off his sword skills and draws his weapon. The boy warns him to settle down and stay quiet, but the man's too eager to prove himself. A massive ape-like creature suddenly lunges out of the trees, baring its fangs as it attacks the camp. The two watch in shock as the beast closes the distance fast. With a loud war cry, the leader charges forward and engages the creature head-on. He lands a strike on the beast's arm and boastfully claims the fight's way too easy, leaving his companions watching with a mix of indifference and disbelief. The wounded monster lets out an angry screech that echoes through the forest. Things escalate fast as three more beasts emerge from the shadows, sending the leader into a panic once he realizes they're outnumbered. The man holds his ground against the incoming pack, while the other two just watch from a distance. After a brief moment of intense focus and a loud shout, the leader unexpectedly tosses his sword aside, leaving everyone completely baffled. He immediately breaks into a full sprint, yelling for the others to run while he claims he's distracting the monsters. The boy sarcastically notes this cowardly move is a classic technique passed down through generations. In reality, the leader's crying in terror as the beasts chase him down, prompting the boy to acknowledge the man's motivation while readying his wand to step in. The boy chants a simple fire spell that torches the beasts in a massive explosion, clearing the path just as they're about to reach the fleeing leader. The beasts are instantly wiped out, leaving the panting leader shocked and confused by the sudden disappearance of the threat. The leader stands frozen in shock after the explosion, while the boy calmly lowers his wand and asks if he's okay. Collapsing to his knees among the defeated beasts, the man offers a sincere thank you to the boy for saving his life. Still shaking from the encounter, the man awkwardly tries to pull himself together as he faces his companions. He hesitantly offers to step down and hand over the leader position, but the boy shoots the idea down instantly, saying he couldn't care less about the title and telling him to keep it. Nearby, a hidden observer watches the group from the thickets, taking note of the boy's white hair, red eyes, and the peculiar magic circles he summoned during the fight. Studying the boy's distinct features and abilities, the mysterious watcher concludes that he must be a Marin.